Alright, we're at time. Yep. So you can use it to charge the sun. Oh, you can only have one? Oof, that's a lesson. Alright, do you have money on your guy? Okay. So we got show from game in. Got that too. Attack. Here, I'll read since you're reading, okay? Then after that, show from game. I'll pray. King Jesus, you're holy and amazing. You're such a good God. Just glorify and worship you in all that we do. Yeah, and we submit it. May your Holy Spirit come upon us to tell us where to go and what to do and how to rule as you rule, because your ruling is the best. Amen. The next day, Moses said to the people, "You have committed a great wrong, but now I'll go up to God. Perhaps I may be able to make expiation for your wrongdoing." So Moses went back to Yahweh and said, "Oh, it was a great wrong this people committed when they made a gold god for themselves. But now if you could carry their wrongdoing," which that's where we learn what forgiveness is, right? Is literally carrying the trespasses. "But if not, you can erase me from the book that you wrote." Yahweh said to Moses, "Whoever offended against me, I will erase from my book. So now, get going. Lead the people where I told you. There, my aide, he will go in front of you. And on the day I attend to them, I will tend to them in respect of their wrongdoing." So Yahweh smote the people because they made the calf that Aaron made. And Yahweh said to Moses, "Get going up from here, you and the people that you brought up from Egypt, to the country I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your offspring I will give it. I'll send an aid in front of you and drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a country flowing with milk and sweetness, because I will not go up in your midst, because you are a stiff-necked people, in case I consume you on the way." When the people heard this tough message, they went into mourning, and no one put on their finery. So Yahweh said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, you are a stiff-necked people. Were I to go up in your midst for one moment, I could finish you. So now take your jewelry off you, so I may decide what I should do with you." So the Israelites strip off their jewelry from Mount Horeb on. Now Moses would take a tent and pitch it outside the camp, some distance from the camp. He called it the meeting tent. Anyone seeking something from Yahweh will go out to the meeting tent outside the camp. When Moses went out to the tent, the entire people would get up and stand at their tent doorway and watch Moses until he went into the tent. When Moses went into the tent, the cloud column would come down and stand at the tent doorway, and he would speak with Moses. The entire people would see the cloud column standing at the tent doorway, and the entire people will get up and bow down, each person at their tent doorway. Yahweh would speak to Moses face to face as someone speaks to a friend, and he will go up to the camp. Though his attendant, Joshua the son of Nun, a young man, will not move from the tent. So they made the calf. And who did Yahweh ask to hold the trespasses? Yahweh. He asked them to hold the compromise. Oh, I hope it would be a lot cheaper then if it was made out of chocolate. Throughout most of my life, I've had a particular place where I pray each day. At the moment is an ancient recliner chair sitting in front of my desk. Next to it is a little table where I keep a Bible and a prayer notebook and so on. And on the other side of the chair is a little shelf where I put my cup of coffee. Across from the chair is a sofa where I sometimes think of God, sitting as I read and ruminate and talk to God and ask God things and seek to see if God has anything to say to me. I know God is also present at this desk as I write and is present in other parts of the house. And I talk to God there too, but it helps me. There is a particular place where I am used to talking to God. Maybe some equivalent dynamics apply to Israel and God. The meeting tent, for which Moses has received very lengthy specifications in Exodus 25:31, has not yet been built, but a meeting tent evidently already exists. Exodus does not clarify the relationship between the meeting tent that Yahweh is commissioning and this meeting tent that is already available. It is another indication of the laid-back process whereby the Torah came into existence. Without a community person to make sure everything fitted together neatly, God could teach Israel things through the instructions for building the elaborate meaning tents, especially as readers contemplate the similarity and differences from the first and second temple. God could also teach Israel things through the account of the simpler meeting tent, a place where people could go to talk to God on their own, perhaps to get God's advice about a problem, to pray for healing when a child got sick, or to talk to God about a conflict with the people in the next tent. Literally, Exodus speaks of people seeking Yahweh, but the way the Old Testament uses the expression makes clear that it means seeking guidance or help from Yahweh. The reference to everybody being free to go there is background to the description of Moses going there as the people's leader. He has special reason for seeking God's guidance. Most of the Torah's teaching is described as giving by God's initiative on top of Sinai, but some is described as give on Moses' initiative when he has to deal with an issue. The story suggests how he might gain God's guidance in this connection. It's just a model of Israel's ongoing life. Ordinary Israelites could always go and talk to God at the sanctuary, as a person like Hannah does. Moses' successors, leaders such as judges, elders, priests, kings, and prophets could always go and talk with God there, as Moses does, when they have to deal with issues that arise and need to know what God will say to this people as new circumstances arise. Their responsibility is not merely to work out what to do, but to consult God about it. We may guess that the material eventually connected in the Torah issued from a process like this. The picture of God's accessibility stands in poignant juxtaposition to the further story of Moses seeking God's forgiveness for the people's wrongdoing at Sinai. Once more, the sequence of events is jumpy. Why is Moses doing this when he has already had the conversation with God on top of the mountain? And Exodus 32 referring to the same slaughter as the preceding verses, or is God threatening another one? The jumpiness again reflects the way Exodus is a collection of separate overlapping stories. God and Israel did not want to lose any of them, so Exodus simply strings them together. Not long ago, Pharaoh had to beseech Moses to carry his wrongdoing hydration. Not long ago, Pharaoh had to beseech Moses to carry his wrongdoing and plead with God on his behalf. There is thus some humiliation about Moses having to beseech God to carry Israel's wrongdoing, but God and Moses will have to get used to it, the idea. God had to put up with the world's wrongdoing and the ancestors' wrongdoing, and will henceforth have to put up with Israel's and with the churches. Yet Moses speaks like someone who is brash and Odysseus. I was trying to make sure I say that word right. Auda.
Audacious. 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 Audacious.
Audacious. Okay. Sorry, guys. I didn't go to school, and so I'm always still learning. Audacious. All right, where was I? There it is. Yet Moses speaks like someone who is brash and audacious. He is totally committed to Israel. In the exchange on top of Sinai, God had proposed abandoning the people and starting again with Moses, but Moses had argued God out of it. Here he goes beyond resisting the idea and says, if you won't have them, you can't have me at all. God's book might be simply God's list of the people who belong to Israel, or perhaps specifically God's plans about whom to use in fulfilling their purpose to take Israel to its destiny and bring blessing to the world. Either way, Moses says, cross my name out of your crossing their names out. He may mean cross my name out and leave theirs in, but this involves some reading into his words. Either way, this time God resists Moses' argument in order to make another point that needs making. There is such a thing as individual human responsibility. Moses has to let his people accept theirs. The commission to get going on the journey to Canaan makes clear that the story has not derailed. Even though the people are stiff-necked, like an ox that doesn't want to wear a yoke to make it go the way the farmer wants. That is true even if God resists Moses' pressure, and even if God punishes the people, and even if God needs to be careful about coming too close to Israel in case they behave so objectively. It'll be impossible to resist coming down on them like a ton of bricks. It's also true even if the people have to live rather more somberly in light of what has happened. God is still committed to taking them to Canaan and throwing out the people who have forfeited their right to stay there because of their wrongdoing. There is again no reference to killing them, but God will lead them and act by means of an aid rather than in person. All right, so let's now do short form game.
Fire's burning all around, ashes falling to the ground. Someone save me, set me free. The smoke it settles on my skin. Don't play with fire, you'll never win. Someone save me, help me free.
Oh my god. This time. Right. That. Rock of Ages, clap for me. Ooh, we'll listen to Page CXVI later. Just the Rock of Ages, clap for me. It's like a classic worship song. We'll use the restroom, then I'll.
Fire's burning all around, ashes falling to the ground. Someone save me, set me free. The smoke it settles on my skin. To play with fire, you'll never win. Someone save me, help me breathe. Fire's burning all around, ashes falling to the ground. Someone save me, set me free. The smoke it settles on my skin. To play with fire, you'll never win. Someone save me, help me free.
Rock of Ages, cleft for me. Good call. Moses said to Yahweh, "Look, you are saying to me, take these people up, but you yourselves have not made known to me whom you will send with me. And you yourself said, I have acknowledged you by name. Indeed, you have found favor in my eyes. So now if I have actual favor, found favor in your eyes, will you let me know your way so I may acknowledge you in order that I may find favor in your eyes? Look, because this nation is your people. Yahweh said, my face will come and I will give you rest. Moses said to him, if your face does not come, do not take us up from here. By what means would it be acknowledged then that I have found favor in your eyes, I and your people, unless by your coming with us, so that we may be distinct, I and your people, from any other people on the face of the ground? Yahweh said to Moses, this thing too that you have spoken of I will do, because you have found favor in my eyes, and I have acknowledged you by name. He said, will you show me your splendor? Yahweh said, I myself will pass all my goodness before your face and proclaim in the name of Yahweh in front of you. I will show grace to whomever I will show grace. I will show compassion to whomever I will show compassion. But he said, you cannot see my face because humanity cannot see me and stay alive. Yahweh said, there is a place with me. Stand on the rock. When my splendor passes, I'll put you in a crack in the rock and lay my hand over you until I have passed by. Then I'll take away my hand and you will see my back, but my face will not be seen. So he's like, what's the purpose? What's the point of us going if our God's not with us? Mm-hmm. Remember, they like full on like, yeah, broke the first and Yahweh's like, I've had enough. But then the goodness of God is always wanting us to step close. In the country of Somerset, in the west of England, there's a canyon called Cheddar Gorge. Yes, where the cheese comes from. One day in 1763, a young minister was caught in a tumultuous thunderstorm in the cliffs nearby. The minister, Augustus Toplady, took refuge in a cave and found himself reflected on the way the rock of faith provides us with a shelter from the storms of life. He, in fact, died of tuberculosis when he was 38. The words of the hymn, Rock of Ages, cleft for me, formed themselves in his mind there. Its opening line is a riff on the story from Exodus. The story and the hymn have in common the insight that there are aspects of God's own being that will be a threat to us, but that God in person saves us from these. The hymn, however, is preoccupied by God's righteousness and our sin, while the story is preoccupied by God's supernatural splendor and our mortal orderliness. It constitutes another example of Exodus thinking its way around a theological profundity by telling a story. This particular theological mystery surfaces several times in Exodus, especially in Exodus 24. What do we mean by being in God's presence or seeing God? Is this possible when God is the Almighty, supernatural, transcendent creator, and we are just ordinary mortals? There is also the moral problem. God has pointed out how dangerous God's literal presence with wayward Israel be. God would be continually battling to be tolerant toward them and might not always succeed. It would be better if God commissioned an aid to accompany them and if God kept a little distance. So here Moses' opening question may be, who is this aid? Or it may be, okay, there is this aid ahead of us clearing the way, but who will be with me? The question is not so different from the one he asked when God first appeared to him in Exodus 3. One can hardly blame Moses for asking. Leadership is a lonely business. How does sending him off on his own as Israel's leader fit with God's talk of acknowledging him and showing favor to him? God's answer again involves referring to the name Yahweh. Exodus has often used the word acknowledge, usually in connection with people acknowledging God, though God has acknowledged Israel's oppression. When the Old Testament elsewhere speaks of God's acknowledging Abraham, Israel, and Jeremiah, it means God fixed an eye on them, recognizes them, chooses them as servants. In Exodus, the idea of God's acknowledging Moses and Israel has been present, though the actual word has not appeared in this connection. Nor has Exodus explicitly spoken about God showing favor to Moses, though Genesis used that expression of Abraham and Noah. And again, in a substance, God was doing this in Exodus 3. Even Moses was not inclined to see God's commission as favor. That being true, Moses says, I need you to show me your way. The dynamics of the conversation again recalls Exodus 3. God's way, as opposed to God's ways, plural, suggests the characteristic nature of who God is and of how God acts. If it seems odd for Moses to request such a revelation after all this time, we need to remember that Exodus' concern is not to give us biographical information about Moses' spiritual development, but to help us understand who God is and how we may relate to God. Exodus, like the rest of the Bible, will often take more than one run at an issue to help us understand it. God's response, my face will come and I'll give you rest, has similar implication to I will be what I'll be. There's nothing concrete about it, just a general promise, with an implied invitation to trust and not to feel overburdened by the responsibility. The seminary where I used to work in England was called St. John's Theological College, and when I was leaving, one of the college children apparently asked if it would now change its name. When I felt overburdened by the responsibility of being in charge, I had to try to remember it wasn't John's college. Actually, God bore responsibility for it. God also gives a paradoxical reassurance. I myself will not go with you, but my face will go with you. It sounds like a distinction without a difference, but the promise means that people will be protected from the kind of reality of God's presence that will be a threat, but will be granted a reality of God's presence that will be a blessing. So, Yahweh's immediate presence is so good that can we be like as super close to him? No, he's like a son. But he still has his face with us, so there's a distance. Hebrew does not have a special word for presence. A word for face covers the idea of presence. Linked to that is the idea that when God's face shines on us, God blesses us. The reality of God's presence, however, is not enough for Moses. He wants to see God's splendor. That is an unrealistic aspiration because it will be like looking at the sun. It will be bound to blind him. As a gesture of love, then God takes Moses as close as possible to that experience that protects him from its mortal danger. God will proclaim the goodness, grace, and compassion associated with the name Yahweh in their wide-ranging reach, whomever. These are the characteristics associated with the face or presence of God, and they are another way of indicating God's way. Yet God then identifies the face with the splendor and says it is too dangerous for Moses to see it. If we feel confused, it is a sign that we're seeing the point. It is a mysterious business trying to think about the presence of God. You can hardly avoid saying things that seem contradictory. What the story does is assure Moses, Israel, and us that God's presence really goes with us. And so do God's goodness, compassion, and grace, and that we need not be afraid. We are protected from what would overwhelm us as human beings and, to Pleiades' concern, as sinners. Yahweh said to Moses, carve yourself 2 stone tablets like the first ones. And I'll write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke up. Be ready by the morning and come up Mount Sinai in the morning and present yourself to me there on the top of the mountain. No one is to come up with you, nor is anyone to appear anywhere on the mountain, nor are flocks or herds to graze in front of the mountain. So he carved 2 stone tablets like the first ones. Early in the morning. Yeah, well, these ones you won't break. No, so the first ones were broken when they compromised, and then Yahweh remade the stone tablets. And these ones are going to be actually stored in the Ark of the Covenant. And it's just like you can see, like he was acting in righteous fury, but again, it cost God to then have to remake the tablets. So he carved 2 stone tablets like the first one. Early in the morning, Moses went up Mount Sinai as Yahweh commanded him. Taking the 2 stone tablets in his hand, Yahweh came down in a cloud, took his stand with him there, and proclaimed with the name Yahweh. Yahweh passed before his face. Yahweh proclaimed Yahweh, God, compassionate and gracious, long-tempered, big in commitment and truthfulness, keeping commitment to thousands, carrying waywardness, rebelling and shortcoming. He certainly does not acquit, visiting the waywardness of apparents on children and grandchildren, thirds and fourths. Moses quickly bowed down to the ground and said, If I have indeed found favor in your eyes, my Lord, will my Lord go in our midst? Because this is a stiff-necked people. Pardon our waywardness and our offense. Possess us. Yahweh said, Now I'm going to seal covenant in front of all your people. I will do wonders that have not been created in all the earth or among all nations. All the people in whose midst you are will see how awesome is the deed of Yahweh that I'm going to do with you. God repeats the promise to drive out the inhabitants of Canaan and the declaration that Israel must not make any covenant with them because that will lead to sharing their religious commitment. Rather, Israel must destroy their forms of worship. God goes on to reaffirm a set of further basic commitments expected of Israel, mostly restating expectations in Exodus 20 and 23. Visiting Jerusalem brings many striking experiences for sober-minded Westerners. The celebration of a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah at the Western Wall is an occasion of enthusiastic rejoicing, dancing, and singing, and Torah scrolls are carried around in excited, boisterous processions. The fervor of this event also features in the Jewish people great celebration each September-October called Rejoicing in the Torah. There are processions around the synagogue with the Torah scrolls, singing and dancing. And many people may share in carrying the scrolls around, reading from them, and declaring a prayer of blessing over them. The singing and dancing may spread out into the streets. These celebrations seem to have begun in the Middle Ages, but they are in keeping with the Old Testament attitude to the Torah. Whereas Christians often assume that the law must have been a burden and still is a burden to Jews, neither Old Testament Israel nor modern Jews see it that way. Exodus 34 gives us one clue why that is so. The Israelites have imperiled their relationship with God, with potentially fatal results. That is symbolized by Moses breaking the tablets inscribed with God's command. Those tablets were to be deposited in the sanctuary as a symbol of the relationship between God and the people. But the people have broken the commands, and Moses has broken the tablets. It is as if the rejoicing is over, but God is prepared to start again. And re-inscribing the commands on 2 new blocks of stone is an expression of that. The renewed gift of the commands is a reason for enthusiastic rejoicing. The relationship is not irretrievably broken. The implications are worked out in God's self-description. A succinct summary of systematic theology of a doctrine of God that is often referred to in the Psalms and the prophets. What is God like? God is compassionate. The word is related to the Hebrew word for womb. Do you remember no, I was going to ask, do you remember? As I thought in my brain, I remember the Hebrew word for compassion. But it's like that word, you got to think of like how a mom has like deep love for their child. The word is related to the Hebrew word for the womb. So it suggests that God has the feelings of a mother for Israel. How can a mother cast off the children of her womb? So how could God cast off Israel? Number 2, God is gracious. Grace means showing favor to someone when there is nothing about the person to merit it. Israel's righteousness was not the reason that God chose Israel. Its failure, therefore, does not mean God unchoses Israel. God is long-tempered. If it did not look like that in Exodus 32, the reader of Exodus can look back over Israel's story and the church's story and see how God's not casting off the people show how long-tempered God is. God is big in commitment. Like grace, commitment means God gets involved with Israel even though there is nothing special about them. It goes beyond grace in declaring that God maintains commitment even though people forfeit any right to expect that God will do so. God is big in truthfulness. God stays truthful and steadfast. What God says happens. When God makes promises, they come true. Number 6, God keeps commitment to thousands. To judge from what follows, this likely implies thousands of generations, which takes us up to our own day and way beyond. Number 7, God carries waywardness, rebellion, and shortcomings. When the child rebels or disobeys, the mother rolls with it, leans into the wind. When the child hurts itself by doing something stupid and disobedient, the mother comforts the child and bandages the wound, accepting responsibility for the waywardness rather than saying, serves you right, deal with it. God does not acquit. After number 1 to 7, this is a surprise. Mother's temper does not hold forever. She may say, that's it, and let the child suffer for a while. Indeed, God can pay us a visit as a result of waywardness. It is a wondrously frightening mafia-like image. Like a visit from the mafia, it may implicate not merely the offender, but the family, because the fate of families is bound up together. The good news is that you can take God for granted. The bad news is that you cannot take God for granted. A relationship, you hear that? So the good news is that you can take God for granted, but the bad news is that you cannot take God for granted. It's just that God who just steps forward, and we can expect him to step forward, but then we also can't take it for granted. Isn't that a funny expression? A relationship with God is like any other personal relationship. When the other person is loving and gracious, you must be wary of thinking that your response is to this counts for nothing. When you have done wrong, you may get into trouble, but you can remind yourself that love and commitment are more basic to the other person than anger or jealousy. Above the Western Wall, when Jews are celebrating Bar Mitzvah and Bat Mitzvah, is the Harem al-Sharif with the Dome of the Rock, where Muslims worshippers and the mosque might make one think of the way Moses prostrates himself in response to God's appearing. They show how kneeling is a serious whole body business, not a graceful leaning on the pew in front. Once again, Moses begs God to go with him and his people. God's response is to talk about sealing a covenant. It is the first time God has done so in Exodus. Exodus 24 did involve a kind of resealing of the covenant relationship in light of the Exodus, but only here does God make this explicit. It is a significant gesture. Israel has imperiled the covenant by its action. Moses has broken the covenant tablets. Does the covenant still hold? Has it been annulled? In uttering these gracious words, I am going to seal covenant, God reaffirms the covenant commitment, notwithstanding Israel imperiling of it. Grace can trump justice. So how often with Yahweh is his unmerited favor, his stepping close? Well, especially when we're asking, hey, forgive us. Even though we deserve wrath, his grace will jump over the justice. Actually, like cover the justice that we deserve. Yahweh said to Moses, write yourself these words, because on the basis of these words I have sealed a covenant with you and with Israel. He was there with Yahweh 40 days and nights. He did not eat food or drink water. He wrote on the tablets the covenant words, the 10 words. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the declaration in Moses' hand as he came down from the mountain, Moses did not know that the skin of his face emanated through his speaking with him. Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses there. The skin of his face emanated. They were afraid to come near him. Moses called to them. And Aaron, all the leaders of the community, came back, and Moses spoke to them. Afterwards, all the Israelites came near, and he gave them as commands all that Yahweh spoke with him on Mount Sinai. And he threw it on the ground. Whoa, 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 whoa. Mm-hmm. Yup. When Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. So when Moses went in before God to speak with him, he took the veil off until he came out. When he came out and spoke to all the Israelites what he had been commanded. The Israelites would see Moses' face, how the skin of his face emanated, and Moses would put back the veil on his face until he went in to speak with him. Exodus 35-40 relates how Moses led the Israelites in implementing the instructions for building the sanctuary. I decided with mercy that I will just read the summary. That's 5 chapters. And so I think you'll appreciate if I just read the summary instead of actually reading those 5 chapters. So Moses finished the work. Unless you want to read 5 chapters of temple building instructions. So Moses finished the work. The cloud covered the meeting tent, and Yahweh's splendor filled the dwelling. Moses could not go into the meeting tent because the cloud dwelt over it, and Yahweh's splendor filled the dwelling. When the cloud lifted from over the dwelling, the Israelites will set out during all their journeying. If the cloud did not lift, they will not set out until the day it lifted. Because Yahweh's cloud would be over the dwelling by day, and the fire will be in it by night, in the sight of all the household of Israel during all their journeying. Huh? When I sit in my ancient recliner, aware that God is there with me, and the way I describe in connection to Exodus 32, I do not have experiences that leave my face radiating in such a way that later in the day, students are afraid to draw near to me. There must be other reasons for their fear. When I go to church and rejoice and arrive and celebrate what God has done for us, I do not sense an overwhelming manifestation of God's plan that makes me worry about going into church. Ought God to give experiences like that? Or ought we to be able somehow to generate them or earn them? Some things that happened in the Bible should also happen today. And some things that people did in the Bible are the kind of things we should do today. But many stories about Moses and Israelites or Jesus are there to inspire us, not because we expect the same thing to happen, but because we are not to expect them. While Moses' face shining as it did was very important for the Israelites, the expression is a puzzling one. The Hebrew word that I have translated, emanate, is related to the word for a horn, and thus looks as if it denotes Moses putting out horns. Maybe he radiated something horn-like, something like the rays of the sun, that dazzled people and threatened to blind them. This would fit with the idea that God's splendor is something people needed protection from. When Moses goes into the meeting tent to consult God about an issue, something of God's splendor attaches to him. For the Israelites, that would be scary but also encouraging. It means he really has been in God's presence and really can mediate God's answer in concerning whatever the issue was. It symbolizes the supernatural and trustworthy nature of the results of Moses and his successors consulting God, which Israel has in the Torah. That's why what matters for Israel and for us is not having experience like Moses, but having the Torah and the rest of the scriptures. That reflects how certain people were in special touch with God like that. Paul riffs on this story in 2 Corinthians 3 to make a different point. He has Moses putting on the veil so that the Israelites will not see the end of what was passing away. He may be taking up the way the story was understood by the Jewish people in his day. Moses didn't come to stand for the Jewish people as a whole. They are not recognizing Jesus as Messiah suggests that a veil stops them from seeing God's splendor in Jesus' face. The light goes on for them only when they turn to the Lord. Nearly all of Exodus 35:40 then simply repeats Exodus 25:31 in the past tense, except that the priest ordination will not come until Leviticus 8-9. One might have thought the Holy Spirit could economize on space or use the space to give us, say, a solution to the problem of evil or the relationships of divine sovereignty to human free will. Yet the repetition is encouragement. We could be disheartened by the people's rebelling and waywardness, but here they do exactly as God says. Once more, it's helpful to read the story from the perspective of its Israelite readers. We could think of people in Haggai's day, feeling that their circumstances made it too tough to set about restoring the temple after the exile. To them, it is a challenge to follow their forebears' example in their detailed obedience to God's instructions. The people's detailed obedience also raises suspense. What would God think of it? Is God interested in the sanctuary anymore after what happens in Exodus 32-34? They may rebuild, but will God come? Exodus' closing paragraph constitutes a yes to that question. God has not said, forget those instructions about building a sanctuary, I'm out of here, as God had reaffirmed a command to Israel by sealing a covenant. Now, a cloud comes when Moses has finished the work. Once again, it both reveals and conceals God's presence, indicating that God was truly there but was preventing people from being blinded by looking at that presence. The cloud had accompanied Israel from Egypt via the Red Sea to Sinai and then settled over Sinai when God was to speak there. Now it covers the tent and God's splendor fills the sanctuary. Henceforth, God is there. Only when it is time for the people to move does God signal this by the clouds moving. The clouds descended like that again when the Jerusalem temple was first built. Though there is no such description when people respond to Haggai's exhortation and restored it after the exile, it is again not something the readers experience, but the story reassures them that God did so come and give this manifestation of the divine presence when the wilderness sanctuary was built and when the temple was built. Even if they did not see the cloud, God was there all right. On that basis, they can live their lives, sure of God's presence in their midst. Man, Yahweh is so good. That even in their compromise, he is so committed to being near them. All right, so that is debt. Yeah. Oh, they do this stifling hot environment. Oh. Oh. Hey, when you... Alright guys, we'll be back.